Throughout history, Gnosticism has been regarded as one of the most enigmatic and esoteric spiritual traditions. Its teachings have often been shrouded in mystery, misunderstood, or even condemned by orthodox religious authorities. Yet, at the core of Gnosticism lies a profound wisdom, one that speaks directly to the heart of the human experience, offering a path to spiritual awakening and liberation. At the heart of Gnostic thought is the belief in an inner divine spark, a hidden aspect of the self that is deeply connected to the ultimate reality, often referred to as the true God, or monad. This divine spark, though buried beneath layers of ignorance, illusion and worldly distractions, can be awakened through gnosis, direct, experiential knowledge of the divine. In this script, we will delve into the hidden teachings of Gnosticism, exploring its cosmology, theology, and the path to awakening the inner divine spark. We will uncover the deeper meanings behind the Gnostic myths, symbols, and texts, and reflect on how these teachings remain relevant in the modern spiritual landscape. To understand Gnosticism, we must first explore its historical and philosophical origins. Gnosticism emerged in the early centuries of the Common Era, during a time of great religious and philosophical ferment in the ancient Mediterranean world. It was influenced by a variety of traditions, including Platonism, Judaism, early Christianity, and the mystery religions of Egypt and Persia. Gnostic thought was not a monolithic system but rather a collection of diverse sects and movements, each with its own interpretation of the spiritual path. Some of the most well-known Gnostic groups include the Valentinians, the Scythians, and the followers of Basilides. These groups shared a common worldview, centered on the idea that the material world is a prison for the soul, and that true salvation comes from transcending this world through inner knowledge. Central to Gnostic teaching is a dualistic view of the universe. According to Gnostic cosmology, the material world is a flawed and corrupt creation, ruled by a malevolent or ignorant Demiurge, a lesser deity who mistakenly believes himself to be the true God. This Demiurge is often identified with the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, and is responsible for the suffering and imperfection of the material realm. The true God, on the other hand, exists beyond the material world in a realm of pure spirit and light. This transcendent God is often referred to as the monad, the one, or the Pleroma, the fullness of divine being. The divine spark within each human being is a fragment of this higher reality, trapped within the prison of the physical body and the material world. Gnosticism teaches that the soul's ultimate goal is to escape the material realm and return to the Pleroma. However, this return is not achieved through external religious practices or adherence to dogma, but through the inner realization of one's own divine nature, an awakening to the gnosis of the true God. One of the most important myths in Gnostic tradition is the story of Sophia, the feminine aspect of the divine. Sophia, whose name means wisdom in Greek, plays a central role in the creation of the material world and the entrapment of the divine spark within humanity. According to Gnostic myth, Sophia was one of the highest eons, emanations or aspects of the divine, in the Pleroma. However, in her desire to know the unknowable monad, Sophia became separated from the fullness of the divine realm and fell into a lower state of existence. In her fall, she inadvertently gave birth to the Demiurge, who then created the material world. Sophia's descent symbolizes the fragmentation of the divine spark, which is now dispersed throughout the material realm. Human beings, as bearers of this spark, are ignorant of their true nature and are trapped in a state of forgetfulness, suffering, and illusion. The task of the Gnostic is to awaken to this hidden truth, to recognize the divine within, and to seek reunion with the higher realms of spirit. The path to gnosis, or direct knowledge of the divine, is central to Gnostic practice. Unlike mainstream religious traditions that emphasize faith, obedience, and ritual, Gnosticism calls for an inner transformation and awakening. This process of awakening is not something that can be accomplished through external means, but must be achieved through inner exploration and self-realization. Awakening to the illusion of the material world. The first step on the Gnostic path is to recognize the illusory nature of the material world and the false authority of the Demiurge. This involves a radical reevaluation of conventional beliefs about reality, morality, and the nature of the self. The Gnostic comes to see the world as a prison for the soul, governed by forces that seek to keep humanity in ignorance and bondage. Recollection of the divine spark. The second stage is the awakening of the divine spark within. This is the moment of gnosis, when the individual comes to a direct, experiential knowledge of their true nature. This realization is often described as a moment of profound insight or enlightenment, in which the Gnostic recognizes their essential unity with the divine source. Transcendence of the material world. the final stage is the transcendence of the material realm and the return to the Pleroma. This does not necessarily mean a physical escape from the world, but rather a shift in consciousness, a detachment from the false values and illusions of the material world. The Gnostic lives in the world but is no longer of the world, having awakened to their true identity as a being of light. While Gnosticism emphasizes the importance of personal awakening, it also acknowledges the role of a divine savior or redeemer figure. In many Gnostic systems, this savior is identified with Christ, but the Gnostic Christ is quite different from the Christ of Orthodox Christianity. Rather than being a savior who dies for the sins of humanity, the Gnostic Christ is a revealer of hidden knowledge, a teacher who guides the soul toward gnosis. The Gnostic Christ descends from the higher realms to bring the knowledge of the divine to those trapped in the material world. His mission is not to atone for sin, but to awaken the divine spark within each individual and to lead them back to the Pleroma. In some Gnostic texts such as the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Philip, Christ's teachings focus on the importance of inner knowledge and self-discovery, rather than on faith and obedience. Among the most significant Gnostic texts discovered is the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of sayings attributed to Jesus, which stands in stark contrast to the narratives found in the canonical Gospels. Unlike the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which focus on the life, death, and resurrection of Christ, the Gospel of Thomas is purely concerned with his teachings, particularly those that emphasize self-knowledge and inner transformation. One of the most famous sayings from the Gospel of Thomas is, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not have will destroy you." This saying captures the essence of Gnostic thought. It is a call to awaken the divine spark within and to realize that salvation is not something external, but an internal process of self-discovery. The true nature of reality is hidden within the self, and only by looking inward can one find the path to liberation. In many ways, the Gospel of Thomas reflects a form of mystical Christianity, one in which Jesus is less of a savior in the traditional sense and more of a spiritual guide, pointing the way to gnosis. The emphasis is on direct, personal experience of the divine, rather than adherence to dogma or external rituals. For the Gnostic, knowledge of the self is the key to knowing God, as expressed in another famous saying from Thomas. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that you are the children of the living Father. But if you do not come to know yourselves, you remain in poverty and you are that poverty. This focus on self-knowledge as the path to gnosis is a recurring theme in Gnostic teachings, and it underscores the deeply personal and experiential nature of the Gnostic path. One of the fundamental questions addressed by Gnosticism is the problem of evil. Why is there suffering in the world? Why does a good and all-powerful God allow evil to exist? For the Gnostics, the answer lies in their dualistic worldview. The material world, with all its suffering, evil, and imperfection, is the creation of the Demiurge, a lesser deity who is ignorant of the true God. In Gnostic cosmology, the material world is not a reflection of the divine order but a distortion of it. The Demiurge, often depicted as arrogant and blind, believes himself to be the supreme creator, but in reality he is far removed from the divine fullness of the Pleroma. The world he creates is a flawed and limited realm, a shadow of the true spiritual reality. This dualistic view of the cosmos leads to a stark contrast between the Gnostic and the Orthodox Christian understanding of the nature of evil. While traditional Christian theology often views suffering as a test of faith or as a consequence of sin, Gnosticism sees it as the inevitable result of living in a corrupt and fallen world. The Gnostic seeks to transcend this world, not by enduring suffering, but by recognizing its illusory nature and awakening to the higher truth of the spiritual realm. However, the Gnostic path is not one of escapism. Rather, it is a path of inner transformation that involves confronting and overcoming the forces of ignorance and illusion that keep the soul bound to the material world. In this sense, suffering can be seen as a catalyst for awakening, a reminder of the soul's exile from the Pleroma and a call to seek the higher realms of spirit. One of the most striking aspects of Gnostic thought is its embrace of the divine feminine. In contrast to the predominantly patriarchal traditions of the time, Gnosticism often depicts the feminine aspect of the divine as playing a central role in the process of creation and redemption. Sophia, as mentioned earlier, is a key figure in Gnostic cosmology, representing both the divine wisdom and the soul's descent into the material world. Sophia's story is one of both tragedy and redemption. Her fall from the Pleroma and her entanglement in the material world mirror the soul's own journey into ignorance and suffering. Yet, just as Sophia seeks to return to the divine realm, so too does the human soul seek to awaken from its state of forgetfulness and return to its true home in the Pleroma. In many Gnostic texts, Sophia is also portrayed as a guide or intermediary, helping to lead the soul back to the divine. Her role as the divine feminine is not one of passivity but of active participation in the process of salvation. In this sense, Gnosticism offers a more balanced and holistic view of the divine, recognizing both masculine and feminine aspects of the spiritual journey. Moreover, the feminine aspect of the divine is often associated with the intuitive, inner knowledge that lies at the heart of the Gnostic path. While the Demiurge represents external authority and control, Sophia represents the inner wisdom that leads to gnosis. This emphasis on the divine feminine as a source of spiritual guidance and wisdom is one of the distinctive features of Gnosticism and resonates with contemporary spiritual movements that seek to reclaim the feminine aspect of the divine. The ultimate goal of the Gnostic path is liberation. Liberation from the material world, from the ignorance of the Demiurge, and from the cycle of birth and death. This liberation is not achieved through external means such as religious rituals or adherence to moral codes, but through the inner realization of one's true nature as a divine being. For the Gnostic, salvation is a process of awakening to the hidden truth within, of remembering who we truly are. This process of awakening is often described as a journey from darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge, from illusion to truth. It is a journey that requires courage, self-reflection, and a willingness to let go of the false identities and attachments that bind us to the material world. In the end, the Gnostic vision of liberation is one of transcendence, not in the sense of escaping from the world, but in the sense of rising above the illusions of the material realm and awakening to the higher reality of the divine. The Gnostic lives in the world but is no longer bound by it. They have awakened the divine spark within and have come to know themselves as beings of light, destined to return to the Pleroma. Though Gnosticism was largely suppressed by Orthodox Christianity in the early centuries of the Common Era, its teachings have experienced a resurgence in the modern world. The discovery of the Nag Hammadi texts in 1945, which included many important Gnostic scriptures, sparked renewed interest in Gnostic thought and its relevance to contemporary spiritual seekers. Today, Gnosticism continues to resonate with those who seek a deeper, more personal connection with the divine. Its emphasis on inner knowledge, self-discovery, and the awakening of the divine spark aligns with many modern spiritual movements, including New Age spirituality, mysticism, and the teachings of Eastern traditions like Buddhism and Hinduism. In a world that is often dominated by materialism, consumerism, and external authority, Gnosticism offers a path of inner liberation, a reminder that true wisdom comes not from the outside, but from within. It invites us to look beyond the surface of things, to question the reality we are presented with, and to seek the hidden truth that lies at the heart of our own being. The teachings of Gnosticism remind us that we are not merely physical beings bound by the limitations of the material world. We are beings of light, bearers of the divine spark, destined to return to the fullness of the Pleroma. And though the path may be difficult, the reward is nothing less than the awakening of the inner divine spark, the realization of our true nature as children of the divine. In Gnosticism, death is not the end but a transition, an opportunity for the soul to either ascend to the divine realms or continue its cycle of rebirth and entrapment in the material world. The soul's fate after death depends on whether it has attained gnosis, knowledge of its true nature and connection to the divine spark. For those who have awakened to their divine spark, death is viewed as liberation from the material body and the physical world, often depicted as a prison or a tomb. The Gnostic soul, having recognized its true origin in the Pleroma, seeks to return to this realm of light and divine fullness. This return is not an automatic process but requires the soul to pass through various spiritual realms, guarded by archons, powerful entities aligned with the Demiurge, who seek to prevent souls from ascending to the higher planes. The Gnostic soul must possess secret knowledge, passwords or signs, to bypass these archons and continue its ascent. These mysteries are revealed through gnosis and often take the form of esoteric teachings passed down within Gnostic communities. Upon successfully navigating these realms, the soul is finally reunited with the divine source, the Pleroma, where it experiences eternal rest and communion with the true God. For those who remain ignorant of their divine spark, death leads to reincarnation, a cycle of birth, suffering, and death that repeats until the soul awakens to its true nature. The Gnostic view of rebirth is closely linked to the concept of karma, in that the soul's experiences in each life are shaped by its actions and level of awareness. However, unlike traditional Hindu or Buddhist teachings, Gnosticism emphasizes that liberation from the cycle of rebirth is possible only through gnosis, not through moral actions or ritual practices alone. Though Gnosticism is often associated with early Christianity, its central themes, the divine spark, the illusion of the material world, and the need for inner awakening, are found in many other spiritual traditions. The Gnostic idea of gnosis, or direct experiential knowledge of the divine, shares striking similarities with the concept of enlightenment in Eastern religions like Hinduism and Buddhism. In Hinduism, the realization of the true self, or Atman, and its unity with Brahman, the ultimate reality, echoes the Gnostic belief in the divine spark and its connection to the Pleroma. The Hindu doctrine of Maya, the illusion that veils the true nature of reality, parallels the Gnostic view of the material world as a deceptive and corrupt creation, which distracts the soul from its spiritual origin. Similarly, in Buddhism, the goal of enlightenment, nirvana, involves transcending the illusory nature of the self and the material world, much like the Gnostic quest to overcome ignorance and awaken to the higher truth. The Buddhist teaching of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, mirrors the Gnostic understanding of reincarnation as a prison from which the soul must escape through wisdom and insight. Mystical traditions within Judaism and Islam, such as Kabbalah and Sufism, also share Gnostic elements. Kabbalistic teachings about the Ein Sof, the infinite and unknowable aspect of God, bear resemblance to the Gnostic conception of the monad, while the process of Tikkun Olam, the restoration of divine sparks to their source, echoes the Gnostic theme of awakening and reintegration. Sufism's emphasis on the inner journey to know God, often described as the unveiling of the heart, aligns with the Gnostic path of direct experience and inner transformation. While these traditions have developed independently, their shared emphasis on the divine spark, inner awakening, and the transcendent nature of ultimate reality suggests a universal spiritual archetype, one that transcends specific religious forms and resonates with the core of human experience. Although Gnosticism is primarily an inward path, focusing on the individual's journey toward gnosis, certain Gnostic sects practiced rituals designed to aid in spiritual awakening. These rituals, often secret and symbolic, were meant to prepare the initiate for the process of awakening, helping them to break free from the illusions of the material world and remember their divine origin. One such ritual was baptism, not in the traditional Christian sense of washing away sin, but as a symbolic act of purification, marking the death of the old self and the birth of the new, awakened self. In some Gnostic traditions, this baptism was believed to cleanse the soul of the influence of the archons, helping the individual to ascend beyond the material realm. Another important Gnostic practice was the Eucharist or sacred meal, which symbolized the spiritual nourishment provided by gnosis. In contrast to the Orthodox Christian Eucharist, which was understood as a commemoration of Christ's sacrifice, the Gnostic Eucharist was seen as a mystical act of communion with the divine, a way of awakening the divine spark within and connecting with the Pleroma. Certain Gnostic sects also practiced elaborate initiation rites, in which the initiate was introduced to the secret teachings and symbols that would guide them on their spiritual journey. These rites often involved the recitation of sacred texts, the transmission of secret knowledge, and the symbolic death and rebirth of the initiate. In addition to these formal rituals, Gnosticism also encouraged personal spiritual practices, such as meditation and contemplation, which allowed the individual to connect with the divine spark within. By turning inward and focusing on the inner self, the Gnostic could begin to detach from the material world and awaken to the higher realms of spirit. In recent decades, Gnosticism has found a surprising ally in the field of psychology, particularly in the works of Carl Jung. Jung was fascinated by Gnostic texts and saw in their teachings a reflection of the process of individuation, the journey towards self-realization and wholeness. Jung believed that the Gnostic myths of the divine spark, the fall of Sophia, and the return to the Pleroma represented archetypal patterns of the human psyche, and that Gnosticism offered a powerful model for understanding the inner workings of the mind. For Jung, the Gnostic concept of the divine spark mirrored the psychological idea of the self, the core of the individual psyche that is connected to the collective unconscious and the source of inner wisdom. The process of gnosis, or awakening to the divine spark, paralleled the process of individuation, in which the individual comes to integrate the various aspects of their psyche and realize their true unified self. Jung's interest in Gnosticism also extended to his exploration of the shadow, the darker, repressed aspects of the self that must be confronted and integrated in order for true healing and growth to occur. In Gnostic terms, the shadow could be seen as the influence of the Demiurge and the archons, the forces of ignorance and illusion that keep the soul bound to the material world. By facing and integrating these darker aspects of the self, the individual can break free from their control and awaken to their higher nature. Further expanding on this, we can examine how Lucifer became a central figure in Romantic literature. In works such as John Milton's Paradise Lost, Lucifer's fall is portrayed not simply as an act of rebellion, but as a tragic quest for self-determination. Milton's depiction of Lucifer is often seen as the first nuanced representation of this figure, emphasizing his complexity, his defiance, and even his charisma. For the Romantics, who valued individualism, passion, and the breaking of traditional boundaries, Lucifer became an almost heroic figure, someone willing to risk everything in the pursuit of freedom. Writers like William Blake and Percy Bysshe Shelley continued this tradition, portraying Lucifer as a symbol of resistance against oppressive systems, whether divine or political. Blake's famous quote, "The road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom," reflects a Luciferian worldview where transgression and exploration are necessary for personal growth and enlightenment. To Blake and other Romantic thinkers, Lucifer's fall was not a descent into evil, but a necessary step toward self-realization, a journey that mirrors the human condition. In Blake's mythology, Lucifer's quest is symbolic of the inner struggle every individual must face in order to achieve true understanding and wisdom. In the 20th century, the figure of Lucifer continued to evolve, finding resonance in both the occult revival and psychoanalytic thought. Occultists like Aleister Crowley embraced Lucifer as a symbol of self-liberation and individual will. Crowley's famous maxim, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," encapsulates the Luciferian idea that each person must follow their own path, even if it leads them into conflict with established norms or moral expectations. Crowley, like many esoteric thinkers before him, saw Lucifer as a guide for those willing to seek out their own truth, rather than accept the limitations imposed by traditional religion. Meanwhile, Carl Jung's exploration of the shadow self offered another dimension to the Luciferian archetype. For Jung, the shadow represents the unconscious aspects of the psyche that we reject or deny, often because they conflict with our self-image or societal values. Yet, Jung believed that integrating the shadow was crucial for achieving psychological wholeness. Lucifer, as the light bringer, can be seen as a symbol of this process, confronting the darkness within in order to bring it into the light. Jung's psychological framework reinterprets the myth of Lucifer not as a story of sin and punishment, but as a necessary journey toward self-knowledge and inner balance. Even in popular culture, the Lucifer figure continues to serve as a complex symbol. In modern TV shows, books, and films, Lucifer is often portrayed as a morally ambiguous character, neither wholly evil nor entirely good, but someone who embodies the tension between free will and destiny, knowledge and ignorance, rebellion and order. This reflects society's ongoing fascination with figures who challenge authority, who question the rules, and who dare to seek truth even at great personal cost. In this broader understanding, Lucifer becomes much more than the fallen angel of Christian tradition. He represents the human drive to explore, to question, and to transcend. His light is the inner spark of creativity, curiosity, and the relentless pursuit of truth, qualities that have driven humanity's greatest achievements and most profound transformations. Whether viewed as a mythic figure, a psychological symbol, or an icon of personal empowerment, Lucifer continues to embody the eternal struggle for enlightenment in a world that often fears or suppresses it. In conclusion, Lucifer's enduring symbolism transcends the simplistic notion of evil often associated with his name. Across history, he has come to represent the pursuit of knowledge, self-awareness, and the courage to challenge established norms. Whether seen as a light bringer, a rebel, or a symbol of personal transformation, Lucifer embodies humanity's quest for enlightenment and the desire to transcend limitations, both external and internal. His complex legacy continues to inspire reflection on the delicate balance between darkness and light, ignorance and wisdom.